So I spent the next few days in recovery. Luckily, after talking to my boss, he apparently didn't mind that I wasn't going to be coming in. Apparently, the boom in customers from people wanting to see the hero of New Star City, who saved a busload of kids, was making him buku bucks. Even if I wasn't there, the fact that I worked there was making him money. The amount of money that he made since I saved that busload of kids is triple what he's made in the last year. So he really wasn't upset when I told him that my healing wasn't coming along as smoothly as I had hoped, and that I wouldn't be able to make it in. He said as long as I could still let him use pictures of me to draw in customers, he was fine with it. As far as the healing goes, it took longer than expected. Nearly 3 days to recover from the damage. I thought it might be shorter because of the length of time it took for my arms. But according to Nylea, the damage to my body was, well, extensive. Very extensive. Apparently, I didn't even feel the full measure of pain that I would have if I weren't in possession of a symbiote. She was apparently able to cut the pain threshold by 75%. That means I was only feeling 1/4 of the pain that I should have been feeling, which is a nightmare scenario in and of itself, because man, I was in pain, and I mean all over. But after 3 days of super healing, I was pretty much back to standard. Not feeling those aches and pains. Feeling pretty good, actually. During those 3 days, I spent a lot of time working with the liquid steel. Because it didn't require any physical exertion, I could still practice with it, trying to get myself better at focusing, manipulating, shifting its shape, creating tools, and then switching their forms, at least while I was by myself. However, I wasn't always by myself anymore. Since I had brought Ned in, once again he was still spending an extraordinary amount of time with me. Every single day, the moment he got off work, the first place he headed wasn't his own house, it was mine. And he went full tilt. When I said that I needed to redesign the armor, he spent every second he had trying to make sure that he could come up with the best possible solution for the problem of my general speed. He even started consulting with actual blacksmiths and people who produce weapons and armor through phone calls or in-person meets, even going so far as to begin looking up more modern armor, bulletproof vests, flat jackets, tactical armor, armor from all around the world. No detail was too small to overlook. He buried himself in it. And today is actually fairly exciting. Today is the day that he apparently has come up with a new design. What he effectively believes will be the most effective style of armor, at least that he can come up with at the moment. And he's supposed to be arriving shortly in order to show me the blueprints, so to speak, so that I can actually begin making the armor. And he says it trumps my old armor by a wide margin in its general effectiveness. It's far more complex according to him, but he says its complexity won't be an issue, but that it will provide a different sort of limitation. But he said he wanted to leave the rest up to surprise. I suppose he wants to see if I'm impressed with his work. Meanwhile, I've been spending some time with Nylea whilst training with the liquid steel, and I've learned some more new things. For example, I found out that Nylea can actually communicate with me on 2 different wavelengths. The first is the normal wavelength that she always communicates with me on. This is essentially just our regular telepathic communication that happens in real time, so to speak, where everything she says comes out at the rate of speed that she says it. basically the speed of a normal conversation. However, apparently, if she feels like it, Nylea can also communicate with me through what she calls a combat wavelength. Essentially, it's not like the normal wavelength, where everything happens at a normal pace. No, it's more like a hyper-condensed, rapid form of telepathic wavelength, in which she can communicate extraordinarily complex information at a hyper rate of speed. Basically, it's like talking so fast that if it were to actually be in words, all most people would hear would be an ear-straining screech of varying sound waves that you really couldn't interpret as words. You would have to slow them down to 1/100th their speed in order to actually perceive them as words. This combat wavelength communication essentially allows her to communicate very important information in high detail within an enormously short time frame. For example, I didn't really notice it at the time, but during the Barrett Tower incident, after my little jump down the elevator shaft, Nylea had actually used that combat wavelength to communicate with me while the steel was on its way back up from the bottom of the shaft. To me, it seemed like she was just talking, but it was actually that super condensed information. When she activates the wavelength, my brain, for a short period of time, becomes capable of distinguishing that rapid form of communication, of actually hearing the entire thing and understanding it completely. I suppose it's pretty handy, being able to drop information like that at the drop of a hat. She apparently even did it when she was describing the abilities of that Pinky guy. Once again, I simply didn't notice it. It filters into my regular perception so seamlessly that I don't notice that for a brief moment of time, I'm perceiving what seem to be very lengthy conversations, but in actuality, only a fraction of a second, or a second max, has passed. Basically nothing at all. Apparently, this is one of the great advantages to having a symbiote, as the wielder of a symbiote can actually partially use this technique themselves, accelerating their thought processes. It doesn't actually make you smarter than you are. It simply accelerates the rate of your thoughts. I had apparently been using it during the fight. I just didn't realize it. In a basic sense, when you get good at it, it's like being stuck in a situation where you have only a few moments to react. But instead of actually just getting those few moments, you get to sit down for 5 minutes or so and think about it, which is actually crazy helpful when you think about it. I had no idea that Nylea's abilities had that much of an effect. I mean, she said that my mental abilities had vastly increased, but she didn't really describe how much. We also had a conversation about our new guest, the symbiote hatchling that I had acquired from Pinky. Ned, of course, wanted immediately to get a symbiote of his own, but apparently the symbiote didn't favor him, which is apparently a thing. According to Nylea, while other symbiotes besides those of the royal bloodline need an extraordinarily specific genetic sequence in order to properly bond with a host, this doesn't mean that the regular symbiotes will just bond with anyone. Most people are fully compatible with symbiotes without any issue. However, certain people contain genetic patterns that aren't rare, but they're more beneficial to specific symbiotes, meaning symbiotes are more capable within individuals who have those genetic sequences or characteristics. For instance, some people are simply more physical, carrying genetic pathways and patterns that make them more capable when it comes to physical activity, running, jumping, building body mass, things like that. And symbiotes can apparently sense this, And in order to find the perfect host for their specific ability, hone in on it and choose hosts based on possessing those characteristics.